How does a broke nobody turn into a rich heir overnight? It's actually pretty simple. Kill the real rich kid, then become him. The man he just killed was his best friend, and the only son of one of America's richest families. Then he puts on a sharp suit and heads to the bank, posing as his friend to withdraw the money. Even though the photo on the passport doesn't really look like him at all. He copies his friend's tone and casually says he doesn't want too many large bills. No one can break them anyway. Thanks to his flawless acting and calm demeanor, the teller doesn't suspect a thing. Next, he rents the best apartment around, indulging in a luxury he's never known, without a trace of guilt for killing his friend. He even flirts with high society girls using his dead friend's identity, and he's not above wanting his friend's fiancée for himself. His name is Ripley, and just days ago he was nothing more than a broke nobody accompanying a female singer. But the borrowed clothes he's wearing give this man with no future a chance to cross paths with a billionaire. A wealthy shipbuilder assumes Ripley went to Princeton too, and Ripley, eager to cling to the elite, doesn't deny it. Naturally, the tycoon assumes Ripley must be close friends with his only son, Dickie. Before they part ways, the tycoon even schedules a meeting with Ripley at the shipyard the next day. Aside from accompanying singers, Ripley's main job is actually working as an attendant in a restroom. But beneath that ordinary exterior lies a terrifying level of talent. He has razor-sharp social instincts and an almost supernatural gift for imitation. After watching a master pianist play just once, he can perfectly reproduce it on the keys. The next morning, Ripley finally learns why the tycoon sought him out. The tycoon wants him to go to Italy and bring back his wild, reckless son. If he succeeds, Ripley will get $1,000, with all travel and living expenses covered. A chance to make money and rub shoulders with the elite. Ripley accepts without hesitation, even though he knows this won't be an easy job. What he doesn't expect is that the moment he leaves for Italy, he begins to truly feel the power of money. With just a first-class ship ticket, his luggage skips the line for baggage check. A wealthy young woman nearby quickly notices him and strikes up a conversation, introducing herself as Logue. To feed his vanity, Ripley introduces himself as Dickie, and to his surprise, she believes him completely. Her family is wealthy too, but compared to the Greenleafs, they're practically insignificant. That's why she's eager to get close at the very least. She wants to leave a good impression on the heir of a powerful dynasty. Her cautious, respectful attitude fills Ripley with satisfaction. He's already starting to believe he is the rich heir. It's clear Ripley is sinking deeper into this fabricated sense of superiority. After disembarking, Ripley takes a bus to his final destination. Once settled in, Ripley scans the area with binoculars and quickly spots Dickie and his fiancée Marge on the beach. When he sees them come ashore, Ripley throws on his swim trunks, rushes to the beach, kicks off his shoes, and charges straight into the water. He assumes this ridiculous stunt will grab Dickie's attention, but Dickie doesn't even glance his way, so Ripley tries a more direct approach, walking up and greeting them as if by coincidence. Even though Ripley claims to be a former classmate, Dickie couldn't care less. Seeing Ripley's pale skin, Dickie quickly realizes he's just here to strike up a connection. Among young people, a suntanned body signals wealth and status, something Ripley clearly lacks. Compared to Dickie, his writer fiancée is far more welcoming. Assuming they went to school together, Marge warmly invites Ripley to join them for lunch. On his way to meet them, Ripley accidentally catches Dickie flirting with an Italian woman. It's clear Dickie isn't just flirtatious, he's a serial womanizer. By the time Dickie finishes his rendezvous and comes home, it's already 4 in the afternoon, and Marge is visibly annoyed. Luckily, Ripley steps in at just the right moment, easing the tension. Then Marge went inside to grab Dickie something to drink. Dickie wasn't exactly friendly to the blank-faced Ripley, not until Ripley showed off his talent for imitation. The arrogance in his voice, identical to his father's, made Dickie's hair stand on end, as if his father were standing right in front of him. Suddenly, Dickie realized that this ordinary-looking Ripley actually had some serious talent. He excitedly started telling his girlfriend about Ripley's abilities. But then...
Could you ever conceive of going to Italy, Tom, and bringing him back?
What?
If you would go to Italy, persuade my son to come home, I'd pay you $1,000.
That's when Dickie realized Ripley had been sent by his father as a persuader. He had no intention of going back to New York, so he told Ripley to leave as soon as possible, that very day. To deal with a playboy who only cared about having fun, Ripley needed nothing more than a single lie. As they were saying goodbye, Ripley deliberately spilled the contents of his bag onto the ground. Seeing a few familiar jazz records, Dickie assumed Ripley was into jazz too, and immediately decided to take him somewhere special.
You like jazz? I love jazz. Marge says she likes jazz, but she thinks Glenn Miller's jazz.
I never said that.
Bird, that's jazz.
Bird, ask me the name of my sailboat.
I don't know. What's the name of your sailboat?
Look! Bird! Okay, we're going to Naples. It's great. It's great. You're gonna love it.
They soon arrive at a bar where Ripley gets a much clearer sense of how carefree Dickie really is. That kind of ease, never worrying about tomorrow, living purely for pleasure, is exactly what Ripley longs for. He smiles on the surface, but inside he's quietly thrown off balance, full of admiration and even a hint of jealousy. Jealous that Dickie never has to try, yet still stands in the spotlight simply because of where he comes from. When Dickie pulls him onto the stage for an impromptu performance, Ripley can't help thinking his life might finally be turning a new page. The next morning, Ripley is awakened by the crisp clatter of a typewriter. Dickie is already plotting how to turn Ripley, the messenger, into one of his own, and just like that, Ripley stays. Later, Dickie suggests using the money his father gave Ripley to buy a sports car. Ripley agrees without hesitation, believing that attaching himself to Dickie, someone his own age, might bring him a deeper sense of fulfillment. Dickie then casually invites him to move in and live together. But what Ripley doesn't realize is that, in Dickie's eyes, he's nothing more than a toy for casual amusement. Still, Ripley is convinced he can become someone Dickie won't be able to give up. One day, the three of them head out to sea, and after hearing which city Ripley wants to visit, Dickie promises to take him skiing. Skiing, an activity reserved for the wealthy, is something Ripley, as a poor man, could never have imagined accessing. From that moment on, he truly believes he's crossed class boundaries and entered high society. Even if the price is being a lifelong tag-along, he's more than willing to pay it. That night, while the two play chess, Ripley begins to test the waters, trying to draw closer to Dickie.
I'm cold. Can I get in?
No.
I didn't mean with you in it.
Okay.
The next day, they board a train bound for Rome, and along the way, Dickie promises to buy Ripley a new coat. But just as Ripley is planning which sights to see in Rome, an unexpected guest shows up. His name is Freddy Miles, another spoiled, carefree rich kid just like Dickie. From the way they greet each other, Ripley realizes that this trip was really about meeting Freddy. The two of them get completely absorbed in a record shop, seemingly forgetting Ripley exists at all, and even forgetting their promise to buy him clothes. Eager to get rid of him, Dickie tells Ripley to go back and grab one of his jackets and sends him away. With nowhere else to go, Ripley wanders around the nearby tourist spots until sunset. Back in the room, Ripley actually puts on Dickie's clothes, taking it all far too seriously. He starts dancing to the music, and this absurd scene is caught by Dickie as he walks back in. Dickie immediately shuts off the music and orders him to take off his clothes, openly showing his disgust. The next morning at breakfast, Freddy doesn't hold back his mockery either. He points out that Ripley eats Dickie's food, lives in Dickie's house, and still gets $1,000 without lifting a finger. Dickie doesn't bother stopping Freddy. He thinks it's only fair. Though the words humiliate him, Ripley has no reason to get angry and can only pretend he didn't hear them. After that, everyone goes swimming, leaving Ripley alone on the boat, reading. Marge notices Ripley's discomfort and steps in to comfort him. She says Dickie treats everyone the same. When his attention is on you, he can be incredibly kind. Everyone he meets ends up liking him, so Dickie never lacks friends. But once he forgets about you, he turns ice cold. Meanwhile, Dickie's lover, Silvana, is watching them from a distance. Seeing how well the two of them fit together, Silvana seems to make up her mind about something. On the day of the Assumption in Italy, everyone celebrates freely under the sun. Suddenly, a woman's body floats to the surface. It's Silvana, Dickie's lover. She has taken her own life. By the time they pull her onto the shore, she's already dead. Unable to accept Silvana's death, her fiancé completely loses control. Dickie knows he's the one responsible for Silvana's death, but he refuses to admit it, blaming everything on the ambulance arriving too late. Dickie's breakdown makes Ripley think this is his chance to prove his loyalty. Ripley confesses to Dickie that he knows about him and Silvana and promises he'll never tell anyone. He even offers that, if necessary, Dickie can pin all the blame on him. What he doesn't know is that Silvana was pregnant, a grave sin under Catholic doctrine at the time. And what Ripley sees as loyalty feels like blackmail to Dickie. The very next day, Ripley receives a letter from Dickie's father. The letter says that since Dickie refuses to come home, he won't be sending any more money. Knowing that the only person who knows his secret is about to leave, Dickie feels secretly relieved. When Ripley mentions going skiing with him, Dickie bluntly says Ripley can't afford it. Still, he offers to take Ripley to San Remo. the birthplace of jazz, as a kind of farewell trip. Once again, Ripley reads far too much into it. On the train to San Remo, Ripley can't help but breathe in the scent of Dickie's collar. At the evening concert, Dickie suddenly asks Ripley if he really went to Princeton. Dickie may seem carefree and laid back, but that doesn't mean he's stupid. He's known for a while that Ripley has been lying. He never saw him at school, and Ripley clearly knows nothing about jazz. Maybe because he knows Ripley is about to leave, Dickie is unusually relaxed. After daybreak, Dickie rents a boat and sails around, while the oblivious Ripley is still dreaming about the future. He says he plans to return to Italy next year and hopes they'll still be living together then. But Dickie tells him he's about to marry Marge. Ripley can't understand how someone as wild and indulgent as Dickie could ever settle down. That question is the final straw. Dickie feels Ripley's constant clinging is downright repulsive.
I think we've seen enough of each other for a while.
What?
You can be a leech. You know that. It's boring. You can be quite boring.
All of Ripley's hopes and fantasies about the future completely shatter in this moment. This time, Ripley doesn't stay silent. He explodes at Dickie, calling him a pathetic coward who never takes responsibility. He accuses Dickie of lying to Marge, of getting Sylvana pregnant, and says someone that two-faced has no right to talk about marriage. Those words enrage Dickie, and for the first time he turns violent toward a friend. He decides to head back to shore, hurling insults at Ripley the whole way, until a humiliated Ripley grabs an oar and swings it at him. Dickie never imagined his toy would fight back, and in a blind rage he tries to kill Ripley. Afterward, Ripley makes it to shore and watches the boat sink in the distance, finally realizing he's just killed someone. It's his first kill, and the self-proclaimed genius hasn't even figured out how to clean it up yet. Panicking, he rushes back to the hotel, planning to pack up and run. But when the hotel clerk mistakes him for Dickie, it suddenly sparks an idea. If Dickie is gone, then he'll become Dickie. After all, most people only know the Greenleaf name and have never actually met him. At that critical moment, Ripley's gift for imitation finally proves its true value. Back in his room, Ripley writes a letter in Dickie's voice, then signs it in his handwriting. He then finds Marge and hands her the letter. He lies, saying Dickie asked him to deliver the letter and bring a few things to Rome. Poor Marge reads the letter and thinks Dickie ran away because she pushed him too hard about marriage. She has no idea her fiancé is already dead and that his killer is standing right in front of her. Watching her reaction, Ripley feels satisfied. It's clear she believes the handwriting is real. The next day, Ripley returns to Rome and checks into a luxury hotel using Dickie's passport. Then he uses his own passport to book a room at a different hotel. He switches between identities, leaving voicemails for each hotel using two completely different voices. Since it's all done through voicemail, small time gaps don't seem suspicious. By the time everything comes to light, the police won't suspect him. Once that's done, Ripley starts spending Dickie's money without restraint. What he doesn't expect is to run into Logue at a clothing store. A lie he once told about being Dickie suddenly works in his favor. Rich kids from America and Italy may not know each other personally, but they've all heard the names. As they talk, Ripley learns that Logue also knows Freddy, which makes him nervous. He might be able to fool others, but there's no way he could deceive Freddy, the one who knows Dickie best. Luckily, Logue mentions that Freddy isn't in Rome right now, and Ripley finally breathes easier. Ripley then says he's broken up with Marge and plans to stay in Rome for a while. It's not because he cares about her doing this, simply gives him a sense of satisfaction. Using his flawless impersonation skills, Ripley withdraws money in front of Logue, even though the photo barely looks like him. His composure and natural manner convince the bank clerk completely. That only reinforces his cover. Logue never suspects the man in front of him is a fraud. That night, Logue invites Ripley to the opera, and the story of brothers turning on each other deeply stirs him. But soon he sinks back into the illusion, as if he truly is Dickie. Still, a fake is a fake. It can never become real. On his way to the restroom, Ripley accidentally bumps into a man, and standing beside him is Marge. The man introduces himself as Peter, a close friend of Marge's. Seeing this, Ripley quickly hides his hand behind his back and slips off the ring. The ring was a gift from Marge to Dickie, and Dickie once said he would never take it off. Seeing Ripley there, Marge assumes Dickie must be with him. Ripley quickly denies it, joking that Dickie doesn't even like opera. Marge knows that too, but something still feels off to her. Dickie wouldn't just leave her without even showing his face. That's not his style. Ripley notices the man nearby seems to know Logue, so he looks for an excuse to slip away. Ripley says he'll explain everything the next morning at the agreed location. In the brief moment he turns around, Ripley comes up with a plan. While Marge isn't paying attention, he sneaks back into the opera house, finds Logue in a hurry, and asks her to go for a walk. He does this solely to keep her from running into Marge at the theater. Once they're in the carriage, Ripley says he's broken up with Marge and doesn't want to see her. Logue says she understands. Ripley kindly walks her home and sets a time and place to meet again. By coincidence, the time and place match exactly what he arranged with Marge. At 10 o'clock the next morning, Logue is already waiting at the meeting spot. At that moment, Marge and Peter arrive as planned, and Logue clearly recognizes them. When Marge realizes Dickie was at the opera the night before with Logue, she understands he truly wants to leave her. Seeing Dickie's fiancé, Logue suddenly understands. Dickie set this meeting up on purpose. She immediately realizes Dickie wants her to back off, so she doesn't linger and walks away. As Logue leaves, Ripley, who's been hiding nearby, steps out at just the right moment. It's a clever move. Without confronting her directly, he successfully eases Marge's suspicions. After that, he can freely continue using Dickie's identity. Although Logue is gone, it actually lowers his risk of exposure, which works in his favor. Over the next few days, Ripley rents an apartment with Dickie's money, buys a few things, and enjoys a decent Christmas. But just as he's absorbed in playing the piano, there's a sudden knock at the door. Ripley rushes over and peers through the peephole. Freddy is standing right outside. He frantically tries to take off the ring on his finger, but fails, so he shoves his hand into his pocket. When Freddy sees Ripley answering the door, he immediately finds it odd. Ripley says Dickie went out to eat, but Freddy knows Dickie better than anyone. He never eats dinner on schedule. While Freddy looks around the apartment, Ripley slips into the bathroom and removes the ring with soapy water. Freddy isn't as easy to fool as Marge. He knows how badly Dickie wants Ripley gone. There's no way Dickie would let Ripley stick around this long. So Freddy is convinced something's happened to him. Faced with Freddy's questioning, Ripley can only smile and stay silent. The more he says, the more he risks exposing himself. Just when Ripley thinks the danger is about to pass, Freddy runs into the landlord on the stairs, who says Dickie is upstairs. When the landlord greets Ripley but calls him Dickie, Freddy finally realizes Ripley has been lying. Freddy rushes back upstairs to confront Ripley, never realizing it will cost him his life. After confirming Freddy is dead, Ripley deliberately waits until people are downstairs, then drags Freddy's body out. He loudly complains about Freddy's terrible drinking habits, then mimics Freddy's voice, talking back to himself. He creates the illusion that Freddy was still alive, then dumps the body outside the city. The next day, Ripley remains unusually calm when dealing with the police, still using Dickie's identity. The police know how powerful his family is, but as the prime suspect, he isn't allowed to leave Rome yet. After committing crime after crime, Ripley becomes so unsettled while cycling that he starts hallucinating, and worse, he runs into Marge. Seeing how anxious Marge is, Ripley comes up with yet another plan to get himself out. He insists Dickie couldn't be the killer, but when Marge asks about the injury on his face, he says Dickie did it. He then claims he'll take Marge to find Dickie, steering her away from the police who've come to question them. Ripley tells Marge to go inside alone, lying that if the police see his injuries, it'll only make Dickie look more suspicious. After splitting up with Marge, he quickly circles back through the front entrance and tells the police he doesn't want to see anyone right now. Once inside, the police say they've learned that Dickie and Ripley went out to sea together in San Remo, and that they found a sunken boat filled with rocks. However, any hotel guest would have had access to those boats. That only complicates the investigation, and there's no proof the boat belonged to them. The police then say Dickie's fiancée is downstairs, and Ripley quickly tells them to ask her to come back later. Marge soon arrives outside the door, and seeing the shadow beneath it, she believes Dickie is inside. She can't understand why Dickie won't see her. Without saying a single word, Ripley manages to send the heartbroken Marge away, easing her suspicions for now. He then writes another letter in Dickie's voice, this one confessing to Freddy's murder. It also mentions Sylvana's suicide. Dickie claims the guilt has consumed him, and that he's decided to end his own life. He even says he's leaving part of his inheritance to his good friend Ripley. After finishing all this, Ripley takes the ring Dickie never took off, then scratches up the photo in Dickie's passport. He does this because the police want him to identify a suspect the next day, so under the cover of night, he quietly slips away. Dickie, as a suspect, can't leave Rome, but Ripley can. So he reverts to being Ripley, and with Peter's help, travels by boat to Venice. But soon after, he's taken to the police station, along with a detective from Rome. Since Dickie, the prime suspect, has vanished, Ripley, who knew him well, is inevitably questioned. Hearing the detective's aggressive tone, Ripley thinks he's been exposed. Peter tells him it's just a common tactic meant to scare him, and only then does Ripley relax. Fortunately, none of Ripley's answers give anything away. Seeing their tactics fail, the police bluntly pull out the letter. Ripley knows exactly what's in it. After all, he wrote it himself. Still, he stays calm, pretends to read it, then turns the tables and scolds the police for wasting time. After this interrogation, Ripley is completely cleared of suspicion. He's gained not just wealth, but also Peter, a friend who genuinely cares about him. But peace never lasts. Suspicious that something's off, Marge comes to Venice looking for Peter. After seeing Ripley's new place, she feels something unsettling she can't quite explain. Normally gentle, she suddenly mocks him, saying he's become a man of high society now. At the same time, Dickie's father arrives in Italy, bringing along a top private investigator. As a father, he never truly understood his son. The one who knew Dickie best was Marge. Marge says she doesn't believe Dickie committed suicide, but his father ignores her and asks to speak with Ripley alone. The one person who might know the truth is quietly pushed aside. Based on the letter, Dickie's father believes Dickie's male friend must have known him best. He never imagines that the mild, harmless-looking Ripley before him is the mastermind behind it all. That afternoon, Marge comes to stay at Ripley's place. With plenty of rooms and everyone knowing each other, it seems perfectly normal. But that night, while Ripley is in the bath, Marge accidentally finds Dickie's ring. She demands to know why the ring is there, but deep down she already knows Ripley killed Dickie. Thinking it was all over, Ripley panics completely and asks Marge to wait while he gets dressed. After just 3 seconds of thought, he starts searching the bathroom for something to kill her with. After finally getting everything he wanted, there's no way Ripley will give it up. Marge has to die. He steps out of the bathroom, calls Marge back, and begins rambling through a sloppy explanation. He doesn't care if it makes sense, he just wants to get close enough to kill her. In his panic, Ripley doesn't even notice his hand being cut by a blade. Just as he's about to strike, Peter arrives in time and Marge breaks down in tears of relief. Seeing Ripley's injured hand, Peter doesn't suspect a thing. Having been part of the interrogation, Peter trusts Ripley's character and believes he'd never hurt Marge. The next day, Marge tells Dickie's father about the ring. He says nothing, only asks his private detective to speak with Ripley. Feeling completely trapped, Ripley stands across the river, staring at his house. What he never expects is a sudden turn of events. It turns out Dickie was sent away to Italy because he once nearly beat a classmate to death. So his father believes Dickie was capable of murder. As for Silvana, they've investigated, and the details in the letter check out. Ripley never mentioned any of this, indirectly protecting the Greenleaf family's reputation. So to thank Ripley and honor his son's wishes, Dickie's father gives him part of the trust income. And just like that, Ripley, the true culprit, really does cross into a higher class. Now he has immense wealth, with every obstacle seemingly removed. But he forgets about Logue, the woman he met at the docks, and she happens to be on this very ship. Their chance encounter instantly sets off alarms. Ripley knows he can't stay. If Peter finds out, all his lies will unravel. He apologizes for disappearing before, and in his rush to leave, even kisses Logue. Even though it happens fast, Peter still sees it. In that moment, Ripley feels desperate. He doesn't want to lose the friend he finally found. But he can't lose the wealth within his grasp either. So once again, it takes him only 3 seconds to decide to kill. Even though their bond is real, the curse of poverty has finally been broken, and he can't risk it. He slowly approaches Peter, pretending to chat, tightening the rope in his hands, and kills the friend he loved most. And with that, Ripley falls into endless darkness with no way back. And that's where the film ends. The true horror of the talented Mr. Ripley isn't the violence. It's the idea that if you want to become someone else badly enough, one day you'll kill who you really are. And that is the punishment Ripley can never escape. That's it for today's breakdown. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.